super thankful for the group of panelists that we have today. This is a fantastic panel. I guess we should start off with some introductions, and we thought we'd mix it up and say, the goal of today's conversation is what are your goals for 2022 and how can you accomplish them? So this is free advice, free workshop for you to kind of figure out what you're going to do in 2022 and how you can accomplish these goals. And we've got great experts to answer these questions. So we'll start off with our experts and what their goals are for 2022. Adrian, do you want to start off? Or do you want to introduce yourself and say what your 2022 goal is?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Adrian Speyer. I'm the head of community at Higher Logic, or Higher Logic Vanilla. Vanilla Higher Logic. There's all kinds of ways that go in there, but Vanilla joined Higher Logic. We were acquired. What we're working on, or what my goals are, I think a lot of people will have sympathy because I'm sure they've gone through it. We're trying to incorporate our support workflow into our success community a bit cleaner. That's my goal, to make that happen and make it a seamless experience for all our customers.
Awesome. I love that goal. That's fantastic. Amanda, we'll turn to you next. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and share your 2022 goal?
Yeah, I'm Amanda Peterson. I am the Community Operations Manager at Mural, and we launched our baby community last year in early May, I guess. So we're coming up on our birthday here soon. So my goal is going to, kind of constantly changes. The goal doesn't change, but I've got 2 big projects coming, and they all are around. Oh, thank you. We sure have had so much fun with our members building it. Making it easier for people to participate. And so all of my projects kind of align into that type of engagement work right now. So we're looking at all sorts of different options on improving our support section, improving the process behind the scenes on feature ideation, just lots of stuff. But it's all about making it super slippy to get into community and stay there.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Jenny, we'll turn to you next. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Oh, this is so exciting. I'm Jenny Weigel, and I run my consulting practice, Jenny.community, coming to you from Los Angeles today. It's good to see familiar names. Hi, Ilker, and new names. Hi, Nestor and Veronica, and Hanifa, if I'm saying that correctly, and all the other names I can't get to yet. Goals for this year. Well, I just launched my consulting practice in June of last year. So from a business standpoint, thank you, panelists. Continuing to offer the best services to my clients that I can, and to continue to build my practice. But another goal I have that doesn't have to do with my practice, but our field, is that I would love to find an academic institution to work with to help create a study path for a major around being a community professional. It's something I did a couple years ago with my alma mater, actually many years ago, for social media communications with the University of Florida. So I'm talking to them again, but I would also be open to doing it with any academic institution. I think it'd be awesome if there's like a declared major people could have in this area. So if anyone has any connections you can introduce me to, that'd be awesome.
I love this. Jenny, we're going to have to connect offline about that goal, because I've been thinking about it lately too. So that's awesome. So great question in the chat. This is actually one of the ones we thought about. And I think, Amanda, this is one that I think you're really prepared to handle is, let's see, I'm transitioning our group from Slack to Circle. So the end of Q2, has anyone done a successful migration using the beta group at first? So Amanda, I think this is one you said you could answer.
Yeah, and so can Adrian, because Adrian and I both he's been in the platform industry longer than me. But I think the most important thing about migration is really paying attention to what your members need and starting there. So some members are going to feel super comfortable moving to a new platform, and others aren't necessarily going to. And getting in and going with the beta is a really great way to get your biggest advocates and allies of your members into the new space, because you're bringing them along with you. They're giving you feedback. You're really enabling shared control of developing your community culture. And so when I've run programs where we've done migrations, that's actually one of the things that we evaluate, like, would this be helpful or not? Right. And then once you decide, like, yes, I want the beta, this is who's going to be in here. I want to make sure that the people that are coming in are from different parts of the world. They have different perspectives. They have different learning styles. They have different passions, right? And then bring them along with you as you do the move. Now, I've never actually managed a Slack to a platform migration, so that might be a good segue for Jenny or Adrian to hop in on.
I've seen it done a few times. The thing is, and you're right, taking the step about the communication. That's the key thing, is because you're naturally gonna lose some people that may be loving Slack and just don't, resistance, so to speak, right? So it's also about the value proposition of why are you making that transition, showing them the benefits. Hopefully, I'm assuming, I don't know how long you're on Slack and then you're moving to Circle, but I mean, really it's about getting the concept and then moving it through to the other one. And hopefully it's something that you've gotten good proof of your concept, and now you have an excited group that's coming to you to the new platform. And I think that's the main thing that people don't realize. It's about building that excitement, and communication is such a key aspect of it. It sometimes gets forgotten. If you make them feel part of the process, like, hey, we're building this, and what do you think about the colors and the banner and the categories, and what should we call the community, and all, involving them in all those little aspects and details is a really great way to make them feel that they're part of that transition, regardless of what platform that you go to. Jenny, yes, you can go. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if I did.
No, you didn't at all. I just want to echo onto the great things that Amanda and Adrian just said, and say that communication is key when it comes to this. I was part of many migrations with my last employer, of people migrating onto the platform, and there's no such thing, I think, as over communication in this case. I think, some people might argue that, but in my opinion, no, you get the communication out as often as you can. If you are a month out from the big change, when you start communicating about it, keep people in the loop, make that a weekly cadence, keep them up to date on what to expect and on the steps, because you're communicating change. And you've also got to put in those communications why you're doing this for your members. Everyone, internally and in your group might know why you're doing it for your business. Guess what? Your members might not care. Your members want to know, why do we have to go through this change? Where's the benefit for us? So I would say, my advice here, just properly communicate that change. And I'm going to pop a link in here to the chat of one of my former clients, the Cisco Meraki community. Now, this wasn't a migration, but they were communicating change and a big redesign that they had to do, right? And I love how, if you click on that link, you will see how they use the whole meme of how it started, how it's going. But that was great because they were communicating what things used to look like and what things are now. And I just thought that was brilliant and fun at the same time. So communicate, and boil it down to what's important to your members to know about the changes.
Oh my gosh, Jenny, I love that meme use there. Like, so freaking amazing. I want to just kind of piggyback on that, because one of the things that you get, like, the biggest benefit is, like, I can find my stuff in a forum. So your search functionality and, like, people wanting to know where their stuff is a huge motivator for change management. So just want to slide that in.
Feature parity was always something really big. People were like, okay, I had these features in the old platform. Do I still have them? And where do I find them? So, some of these communications might not be the most fun things to write, but they will be very critical to your members to digest that information and have a place to go to reference things.
I think that's the best way to say it too, is like, where's my stuff? Like, like nothing else matters like from like a community member perspective, like that's what they want. Like just give them their stuff, and that'll make them happy, And that's what I want, like, right? Oh, so we've got hellos from Istanbul, and we've also got hellos from Lisbon. Am I saying that right? Where is Lisbon?
It's Lisbon. It's Portugal.
Lisbon. It's in Portugal. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nice.
Adrian, I was homeschooled, so my geography is not very good.
Oh, it's all good.
So let's see here.
I'm horrible at local geography, but American geography, for whatever weird reason, I'm Canadian, by the way, but I know all the American geography. I don't know how that ended up happening. My dad would play that game with me. What states border on Utah? Things like that.
That's such a fun game, but I would probably fail.
It was to keep him awake while he was driving.
Oh my goodness, that would probably put me to sleep.
That's another panel.
Oh, that's a whole other panel. Awesome. So we've got a really great other question here. I'm launching user groups for a data community. Biggest challenge is deciding whether to start virtually or in person. I say virtually because cheaper and breaks geographical barriers. Any thoughts on this? Amanda, you're shaking your head. Who wants to go
I think
first?
Jenny is too, but I will tell you right now, as a person with a disability, the pandemic is not over for me. So being able to participate virtually is not just about geographic barriers coming down. It's also about access and equity for people who are maybe still dealing with having to be really careful about the pandemic, and also not wanting to confine your community to specific locations. Now, that said, there's definitely places where having those in-person events and then transitioning to virtual might make sense. But for me, I've always found it easier to go from a virtual place to an in-person place and then back. Just because you're building relationships online, you're ensuring access and equity, you're ensuring that you can moderate it successfully and make sure that everybody can gather. Sometimes when you're creating community, the temptation is like, well, let's start in one space. Let's start in one place. And with mindfulness, I think you can start with your one place being completely virtual.
Yeah, and my comment here is really that anytime you're starting user groups, I believe in having great relationships, partnered relationships with your community members in those regions, and asking one or two people to act as ambassadors to help you with the launch of user groups. But the most important thing is also to take a larger group of there and start talking to them about what it will mean to launch this user group. And so if you're talking to members like Amanda, and she's part of your user group in Boston, she'll be able to point those things out, like how important it is maybe to start with virtual. And I agree. Talk to your members, consider people of all abilities and all backgrounds, and that hopefully will play into your decision. If you're getting an overwhelming amount of people saying, yes, we want to meet in person, I know a lot of people are eager after these 2+ years, right? Then at least consider also wherever you meet, that it's going to be in a welcome and accessible place as well.
So it only took me 15 minutes to talk about stamps. So I'll talk about my stamp community.
Who lost the bet? I'm just kidding.
So as part of everyone has their hobbies, and I have a stamp community that is very active, 2,000 members, and it's online. Like we have a lot of good times. We're actually there's a conference in Toronto that's going to be in a couple of months. We're actually going to have like a side event where we're all going to meet and get together in that aspect. But it took I don't know 3 years, maybe been 4 years now, and so I'm a big fan of the virtual aspect, and we're also going to have a virtual component as well, because we don't want to, as Amanda pointed out, we don't want people to feel left out. So the technology has gone a lot further than it was back when. I mean, there's 85 different technologies now to stream, and Instagram Live and Facebook Live and StreamYard. And honestly, if you're doing an event now and you're not thinking about hybrid, I don't know what planet you're on, to be honest. Like, it doesn't, and I'm probably calling out some people that are having events that are coming up soon that I know I'm actually going to, where there's no hybrid option. And I think that's a really big mistake, but hey, that's to edit that out at some point maybe, but that's my opinion. Oops.
I love it. I went to actually a hybrid event yesterday. We went back to work at my office and we sat there in person, 50 of us in the office, and watched just a Zoom call. And I have never been more bored in my life, to be completely honest. Like, I think we have to really be very creative about hybrid events. Like, it's not good enough just to be like, oh, we're in person and then we're going to watch a Zoom. Like,
yeah, well, it's not TV, right? You're not sitting there watching reality TV. I mean, I think it was Shayna Summers I was talking about, and you need to be mindful in how you're creating those experiences as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just a TV program where the people are having FOMO at home, and of course maybe we'll get to that point where there's robots walking around the conference and you could like rent them out and doing that kind of thing. But like I was thinking of, there's this tool called the Owl where you can have like these cameras that are all around 360. I'm thinking what would be cool. I mean, I don't know if anyone's doing that, but at a conference to have, you can sit down at the table, see some participants and interact with them as though they're there. And so it's a combination of people that are there in person and people that are virtually RSVPing on those tables. I think would be a fun item, but I think I've gone way farther than the question had asked. So I apologize for my tangent.
But that's half the fun. So great question next, though. How do you stay up to date on all the new community-esque tools that are coming out daily? And so that was like a nice little segue, right? As far as owls. Jenny, you're looks like you're ready for this one.
Oh, I always make faces, so just a heads up on that. Anyways, I just wear my personality on my face. Yes. Awesome question. Shout out to Vicky. Thanks for asking it. So especially when it comes to my work and my consulting practice, at first I was like, I need to stay up with all the tools and everything happening and be on every email list and whoa. And then I had to take a couple steps back. That was a lot, right? So then I really thought about my core audience and who I'm dealing with. And I would consider you all to think about your community members and the general audience you serve. And I just kind of had to say, I'm going to pick a couple platforms that I'm going to stay close with and monitor. And it's mostly the ones I partner with as well. And just really try to understand them as deeply as possible so that I can either work with them or benefit them or their clients in some way. And when the times come up when I might need to go research some new company, I'll go do that. But it is just, I think, a lot to ask unless someone's got all the time in the world. Please raise your hand if anyone on here does. Didn't think so. That to stay up with everything, because there are literally just so many new platforms coming on board with all this new tools, new resources. So concentrate on what's important to you, your community, your audience, your members, and stay focused on those. That's my advice.
I echo that. It's really important to stay focused. You can go down a rabbit hole. I can just tell you, as someone on the platform side, I mean, there's our salespeople will come and say, "Oh, there's a new platform." I'm okay. There's like a new one every day. So, but it's a matter of what makes sense for your audience. Like, I was having a really good chat. Jenny, Todd Nielsen, you may have even seen, he was having a chat about doing content on TikTok, and I was like, Are people really going to want to consume community content on TikTok? I don't think so. I mean, if you're watching dances or people fall down or, doing weird memes, you're not about to stop your scroll to hear someone go, "Let me tell you about what I think about community building." It's just the wrong place to be building anything of that nature. So it's what?
Adrian,
Yes.
there are other sides of TikTok.
No, I know.
I'm on the
you just haven't perfected your
community
feed
building
yet.
side of TikTok. It's amazing.
That's not how I would consume it. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
right?
but I do.
Like, yeah, but I'm not going to TikTok to watch community content. Like, that's just not.
Yeah,
I get it, but there are people out there particularly younger people than me.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
But I mean, it depends on your audience. I mean, I know who Todd is aiming towards. He's aiming towards people that could afford his consulting services, and it's just you have to look at your audience and the tools, and I think that's an important aspect, because it's an early lesson from the early days of social media when everyone was like, oh, let me do Twitter and Facebook and the 45 other social networks that all came out at the same time, and you can do all of them bad, or you can choose one or two that you're going to do really well.
I mean, I think that's a great point to consider your audience and where they're at, and like where to meet them. I think we could have a whole debate on TikTok and how to use it.
But in 15-second increments, and all arguments have to loop. So you start at the beginning.
I mean, I would watch a meme account about stuff community members say, humorous stuff around community. I think thought leadership on TikTok would be very different. That's just my thought.
I'm curious to hear from our audience in the chat. Please give some kind of a emoji if you are using TikTok to look up community or professional topics. Just real quick, I'm curious. Okay, all right. Doesn't sound okay. Anna is, Jasmine is, Amanda is. I should count mine in. I occasionally do. My algorithm is now the weirdest mix of things, but it's quite amusing. All right, we've got.
I may am the wrong. Maybe I'm the wrong demographic.
Well, no. I mean, I would say so. Like Nestor is saying, audience versus your brand voice. I mean, for me, like the community I manage, right, is civil engineers. They're not on TikTok. Like,
oh, let me be careful about what I'm saying, because I think it was misunderstood. If you had a community of B2C products, or you're trying to engage with your community, TikTok is fine. I'm talking about people in this specific case. Todd is looking at creating content about community management. That's a different animal. Certainly, like I've done stuff with stamps on TikTok, and things of that nature. But to have a talking head, serious topics around business, I personally haven't seen it. I'm not saying that can't happen. And certainly depending on your brand and what your community is about, like I agree with you, Tears, like I don't know if the engineers are hanging out there, but there might be other communities you may be building that makes sense for TikTok to be your spot. That I just want to make that clarity, because I don't think it was clear before.
No, and that's great. I mean, I think that makes sense. Like that, I don't know, like to be like focusing on us, right? Like as community builders, as a specific audience. Like it's interesting to think about who would be interested in looking at TikTok content.
Like if I was selling women's clothing or some B2C kind of thing, like I'd be all on TikTok all the time and trying to get influencers and building that. I mean, that's the place to go for that demographic, right? If that's about knowing your audience, and I did spend a lot of time doing audience surveys of my communities that I'm in to know, so for example, I know that Instagram is a much more popular place because for the stamps, because it's a visual community and people want to be there. And they've told me Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat are not as popular. But I asked the community to find that information out. So do the same.
See, Kat and Tirza, this is why I love this format here today. And thanks everyone for joining, because you never know where we're going to go with these questions, right? It's all fascinating and it's all fun. And the last thing I'll say on TikTok is just that I think there's a misconception out there between who the creators are and who the audience is. The statistics have been showing that the audience demographic is growing exponentially. There's actually become larger and larger amounts of bigger demographics, older demographics coming in to watch as observers. Like many platforms, the majority of people on it are observers. I myself am mostly an observer. I've only ever posted one TikTok, and I don't know if I ever will again. So, so you've got your observer audience in there for the entertainment of it and digesting information. And you've got the creator audience, which that average demographic skews younger, but that also is expanding as well. So it's just interesting things to take in as as we as community professionals decide, is that somewhere we should be putting content? But as always, check with your community, ask them, do they like it? Do they expect you to have a presence on there? What do they enjoy? What do they expect you to see? And meanwhile, I'll just continue to be thoroughly entertained by my weird algorithm recommendations.
Well, I mean, you're right to do the survey. Like I said, I did a survey with my community. I was 500. I got 500 responses and not one vote for TikTok. So I'm not going to spend my time. It's a total waste of my time. But you have to have the community. I mean, that's the thing. When people, that's the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to community building is they're going to tell their community how it's going to be, as opposed to having the conversation and discussing and having that conversation around it. It's the biggest mistake people make.
Yeah, and that's the most important part of community building, right? It's like figure out where the community wants to go and what they want to talk about.
You would be amazed the conversations I have where people just tell me, this is what the community is going to do, and this is what the community is going to do. And I'm like, okay, did you talk to anyone? Is that... and like, no, but it's our marketing goals. And
have fun with that.
And Anna, by the way, it wasn't a professional survey. It was a stamp community. So they'll admit if they're on TikTok.
So I will say, though, as a mother of an 8-year-old who's very active on TikTok, one of the things I think as that generation, right, like matures, is the platforms that they're on and where we reach that audience is going to have to change. So like with her, if I talk about a brand or different things, she'll be like, well, she'll look them up on TikTok first, right? And she'll say, well, they don't even have a TikTok channel, so like they're not a valid brand that I want to follow, right? Like, so like everything to her, Jenny's shaking her head, but that's how that group thinks, right? Like, and I interact with like through Girl Scouts and baseball and a bunch of things. Like that's how that group is thinking, and that's how they're growing up, right? Is if these companies and these businesses aren't on platforms that they're familiar with, they don't find them valuable or relevant. So it's really interesting, I think, as community people to think like long term how we're going to have to shift and mature as our audience kind of grow up, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, not to go down the TikTok rabbit hole further,
That's...
but I mean, that's the thing, right? It's for brands, like it's a no-brainer at this point. Like it, I mean, if I was a consumer brand, then I would certainly be on it.
Yeah. I really do suggest we take the TikTok conversation into some tweet. I think we could probably go down that road a fair amount. But I think there are a few more questions, right?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Let's go to with thoughts on attrition rates with community migrations. I want my team to have good expectations. So Adrian, you're probably a great person to answer this. Amanda, it looks like you're probably... Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Attrition is going to happen naturally with communities anyways. And attrition, when you move and are asking somebody to change their pattern and do something different, is going to happen anyways. And so kind of going in knowing and doing the best you can to support everyone through it and be crystal clear with your communication. There's still going to be people who are like, I'm not going to go through that door right now. That doesn't mean they're not going to come through the door later. That doesn't mean that they're not going to come. But in general, like, I don't know what the like statistics are, but anytime we were looking in migration, I was always really happy if we brought over a quarter to a half. And that might be low, right? But that was always my like my set the bar low, work really hard, and when you crush it and you get 60 or 75%, be really, really excited. Because like I said, community is something that people are giving, especially with B2B community. They're giving their time to each other and the company. And like anytime we add friction to that, we will reduce somebody's ability to want to be there, right? What do you guys think?
It's I wish we had stats on that stuff. It's hard to get, because usually we have, if someone's coming from another platform, we usually just get, the after effects of it. But certainly, I think the difference in the question that they're having is it's a technology difference. I haven't really seen it so much of an attrition when if it's forum to forum, but there could certainly I've seen the difference between if you're going from a Slack chat app where someone might have 13 or 14 Slacks that they scroll through during the day, and now you're asking them to go to an external platform that's a different experience now. Yeah, there's going to be that's by nature there's going to be attrition. What I would be focusing in is what are your rituals and touch points to start making it their habit to go to that external spot. Like what are your magnets? I think that's the word they use. I don't know. Maybe I've drank too much marketing Kool-Aid, but
I like magnets.
but
I mean,
what are those?
it's like a touchstone, right? Like, what are the things that your community, and that's what I would always tell people is like, we need to make a list of these are the 10 things that our community needs to see the moment they walk in the door. And if that's not there, the attrition's going to be much higher.
Yeah, and Jenny and I know we're going to have a webinar in the future about that. It's talking about content programming. That's like the main thing is, right? It's knowing those things that are going to be happening that people are like, oh, you know what? It's Tuesday. I need to go to the community because something's happening. Wednesday, Thursday, whatever those things are, every quarter, every month, whatever those things are. And so I would say, just keep in mind that forum to forum is a different move than Slack to app to Slack to a wholesale platform. And some people maintain both. I mean, it depends on what your abilities are and team size as well.
Yeah. I do have one more thought on it, Jenny, but do you want to jump in before I natter on a little bit longer?
Sure. And kudos to Anna coming in hot with the questions today. So that's another good one from her. And so Anna, definitely take all the advice from Adrian and Amanda. And something that I have told my clients to do during this time is to focus on your power users or super users or your VIPs, whoever you call them. They could be anywhere from 10 to 50 people. It depends on your definition of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give them a little extra love during this period. In fact, maybe you even want to offer them a special webinar with you, invite them to that. Or if you have the time and they're a small enough group, one-to-one conversations. So you can tell them the importance of this change and how it will benefit them, because you really want to get them on board with coming over and then continuing to set us a great example on the new platform. So really trying to get their buy-in, their belief, and their positivity, and maybe even help in communicating how great this is going to be. So spend a little extra time giving them a little extra love. That's all I would add.
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing to know is, especially because communities naturally have attrition, it's not a bad thing to lose members because you're confining your engagement into more people who are more active, right? So it is not always the worst thing to have your least active people who may or may not have even logged in or may not have read anything go away, because it allows you to really pay attention to the people, like you said, Jenny, who are your biggest fans and your most active, who are the heart of your community.
And bring it back to marketing for marketing folks that may be here. They may know this about, hygiene of your list as well, right? It's just that the nature of making sure that you're not keeping people around that, because it'll also skew your metrics too, right? Because you have a total member, it'll skew things. If you have a really highly active membership pages per session, things of this nature will actually be a much more beautiful number if you kind of have people hanging around that maybe it's not for them or different ways.
Yeah, if you don't scrub your list, your open rates will really tank, right?
Yeah. And I should mention too, don't be too rough on people that don't engage either, because I find that's the flip side. I find people that are new to community building, they haven't logged in for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I'll start harassing these poor people.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, here's the deal. I think, we do a disservice to people. And I think you hit on that, Jenny, when you were talking a little bit about, most people are there to observe. Community building exists because we want to create connection and relationships, right? But everybody's going to be at a different point, and most people are going to be there learning and observing. And it might be 4 years before they feel confident to step in and share their experience. But that formation time can be important. And so when I say don't worry necessarily about attrition, I mean the people who might have changed jobs or aren't using your product or gone back to school or whatever it is. I'm not talking about the learners who we want to treasure. And I hope I never have to say the word lurker again.
I took it out of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I always try to think about it as high school dance. When you go to that first high school dance, no one wants to be the person on the dance floor. Some people by nature just grab a partner and start dancing, and hey, good for you. But there's a lot of people that'll sit off the corner and listen to the music and enjoy it, and that doesn't mean they're not having a good time.
It just means they're different.
Yeah, it just means they're different. But they if you ask them a survey, did they have fun at the dance? The answer would be yes.
They're going to say yes.
Yeah, the music was great. And thank you, Jenny, for being the person to go to the dance floor right away.
You can always count on me. I love getting out on that dance floor.
Now we know. You have a party, invite Jenny.
I was about to say I'm not surprised at all.
Send invites to jw@jenny.community. Thank you.
Oh, so we've got some other great questions, but Anna said, thank you. She did need some content programming overview ASAP. I'm sorry, and that sounds amazing. I know somebody else shared another community builder called Miss Excel, who has a spreadsheet for tips. As far as it sounds like that's community building, or I'm sorry, content planning. So good stuff in the chat, lots of stuff about TikTok still that you can review. But the next question is, how do you get an internal and external stakeholders to buy into community? For example, sales are interested in numbers, but as we know, community building is slow and steady. Who wants to... Again, this is like the most popular community building question, right? Like, how do you get buy-in? Jenny, do you want to start off? Or we'll let you lead off with the dance. You can dance first.
All right. Okay. Put me to the dance floor here. All right. So a little bit has to do with your internal relationships at the company, and a little bit has to do with just of equating the community to your business goals, okay, in general. So first off, if you can't marry the community's efforts and goals to what the business is focused on for the year, you're going to hit a dead end, okay? You've got to look at what the community is focused on, their strategic goals, the business goals, and figure out where in their community can have a direct benefit, okay? So that's the first thing you need to and that's a much bigger thing than just saying go do it. Like, it does take some skill to kind of like perfect that, but that's kind of just the high level takeaway from it. Second thing is, when you're looking for that internal buy-in, it might be that you have better relationships with certain people internally, and so who might be willing to give you more time to go and kind of like present your case and like listen to your roadshow about things. Maybe you are BFFs with the head of marketing, or a person who gets you in like 30 minutes with the head of marketing, and maybe you don't the head of support or something just doesn't have any time and doesn't give people any time. So but leverage your connections internally to try to get time with internal stakeholders to present your case, present your roadshow about how you think community can benefit them. I'll throw a link in the chat here to a free roadshow template that I use, which breaks down 5 different teams within an org and how community can benefit each one of those teams. So hopefully that will be a good starting point for you. Yeah. But for this point, I'll turn it over to either Amanda or Adrian to continue.
This is like my favorite thing to talk about, Jenny. So like, I'm like, yes, put that link there. I'm excited about this. Like, let's go. The biggest thing for me about doing internal work is really understanding the people that are there, and you can't do that in isolation. So even though I'm in an ops role, I go to all our company happy hours. I attend all of the times where our super engaged people are. I build relationships. I'm part of I make time to do our donut coffee meets. I met with one of our engineering managers, and I've got leads related to that. I've found amazing connections with our customer support team that way. Like, I cannot express to you how much you get and benefit from building that connection on a personal level every single opportunity that you get, right? Because even in a company that's 1,000 people or 12,000 people, if you're a person that's showing up in these events, if you're a person that's asking questions at all hands, people will start associating you with community, and they'll start thinking, that person is a good person to talk to about my current problem. And that's what you're going internal, right? You're helping people solve the challenges that they do. And I actually use an empathy map. I think we've talked about this a couple of times on a few of the different calls that I've been on recently, which is basically mapping out from this person's perspective, what are they thinking about? What are the problems they're trying to solve? What are what are their actions? What are they doing? What are blah 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 in a visual way, so that I really can listen to them and think about their problem with them, instead of coming in and saying, hey, what can you do for community? Give us content. How can community help you? And by doing that and building those connections, I'm helping people do their jobs better, which makes them want to talk to me more, right? So that's what I would say. Just show up, go to those things, and listen to people.
You guys gave great advice. I can add to that. It's just, I've always been a big fan of trying to be of service to your stakeholders to make them successful, and being there and saying, hey, how can we work together to make that happen? And then another quick hack that I always found helpful was, if you have a specific stakeholder that you need to get on their side, find out the people that report to them, spend some time talking to them and understanding the things that matter to them. Therefore, when you then talk to them, you're using their language, you're using their mannerism, the way that they look at the world, or how they look at or perceive your community, and how you can make that presentation even more powerful. I would never go on cold to an executive meeting. I would do my research on them before I do so.
I mean, that's great advice. And Amanda, I don't think I've heard a better explanation of an answer to that question. So that was great. Thank you so much. Here's another good question about virtual events. How do you increase attendance rates for virtual events when Zoom fatigue is a big reality?
I would like to argue there's no such thing as Zoom fatigue. I would like to argue there's a lot of crappy events going on. I mean, because if you make good content, people will show up. I'm convinced of it.
My brain went there too. And there's lots of different ways to have these virtual events. And we aren't confined to just Zoom or just Bevy or just Hopin. Like, there's platforms that do Icebreaker. There are things like Butter. There's stuff like Mural, where you can create and design an experience that is as impactful as being in a room. Because I think a lot of us have this nostalgia of being in person, where it's like, oh, we were all at the office and we could see each other and it was great. But y'all are not going to tell me that you weren't sitting there during meetings being like, this didn't have to be a meeting, and checking your watch and trying to figure out how fast you were going to leave. So, like, this is not about Zoom fatigue. This is about having good, productive meetings. And that is something that I will go to the grave on. Like, ignore the nostalgia. Yes, we miss each other, but it wasn't roses. Like, it wasn't all roses.
Well, I mean, the thing that I
investigate.
I mean, the thing that I'm going into is leaning more about the event content. Is the thing for me is, I've seen a lot of garbage event stuff, and you start to know the people that you want to listen to and attend to. So I would say is, if you're seeing that there's a decline in the stuff that you're doing, I would question maybe the value. Are you matching the value of what you promise? I actually just had an argument with someone I don't even want to get into about it, but essentially, if you have a landing page and you're going to deliver certain content and you don't deliver on that, they're going to remember that, and the next time you try and get them to come, they're not going to show up. And anyone that's done any webinar on any platforms that I've been, I'm always clear about what are the takeaways people are going to have when they come. hear you, and are your slides and what you're going to talk about deliver on it? And if not, then we're going to have a problem, because what's going to happen eventually, the trust will go down with your audience and they're never going to want to attend. And so I would say if you're seeing a decline, somewhere over time, then there may be a problem with the content. And I see Amanda's comment that the fatigue is real, but I would debate it a bit in the sense that if the content is good content will always win over fatigue. I mean, obviously, if it's every day, that's kind of a problem. But I think that it's more a function of there's just so many people that are their bosses are saying, "Oh, you can't travel, just do a webinar or whatever," and they're not giving a lot of thought to the value. And so that's really the people become more cynical of some of the content.
And Isha adds some clarification. This is for brand ambassadors, and I think we should examine that, because that's important when you think about your brand ambassadors. Like for a meeting, our motivations, internal and external, for meetings we attend is super, super clear. But it gets trickier when it's a brand ambassador who are not necessarily paying to come. And then you have to think about them as a volunteer, and you really have to nail the intrinsic motivations and make sure that when you're bringing people in, that's what's happening. So, can you use something like a lean coffee setup where they're coming in and they have access to being brand ambassadors, but they're getting help, top tier help from like the experts in the world on how to use, like, how to run this better. Like, you have to really nail that, because you're basically giving them that time. Oh, good question, Tirsa.
And I see Isha's given some clarity about it being for brand ambassadors as well, and they're creating their own topics. What I would suggest, because I do tons of events, people know, right? Like I do so many webinars. What I look at and what I listen for is, what are the people talking about? What are the searches happening on my own community? What do I hear people? It's a lot harder now that we're not in person. I'll fully admit it, because if I could go to a conference, I would just hear the buzz, the water cooler, and oh, this is, it does take a little bit more effort, but you will know in whatever industry you're in are the things that are on top of mind. Like, here's a quick one that will surprise nobody. What do you think the number one topic is that community people want to know about? Quick guess. Anyone want to guess? Metrics. It's not a surprise. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. The number one search, the number one question, the number one consumed content force is all about measuring ROI and metrics. It's always no, but I mean, that's the thing. Like, I know I can do 100 webinars about it, and people will show up, as long as, like I said, we give on the promise of what we're doing and that kind of thing. So Isha, I would take a look at those things, and yes, your brand ambassadors may be coming up with their own topics, but you may want to check against, does your community actually care to hear about those things as well? Because there might be a mismatch, and that could be a reason why you're not seeing people. But I'm just spitballing here.
And if I could elaborate on what Adrian just said, Isha, you might, as the community professional here, you really might have to act as gatekeeper, because you also want to make sure that there aren't so many of these virtual events being offered to your community, that they're getting overwhelmed and and attendance might be dwindling. You might want to have some guidelines in place about how often these can be happening and what they need to entail. Maybe you even need to be checking their topic and how their time frame, what they plan on covering. Don't mean to make more work for you, Isha, but maybe in the beginning of this, like to get these things going, like that's something to ensure that these are truly virtual events that are going to be worthy of your community's time, but putting out there as opportunities for your community to come together. There are two tactics I have seen people using in this regard of virtual events to increase attendance. I don't have any data on if they have been successful or not. I've just been seeing them used. Okay. First one is having some kind of exclusivity about the event, where there's an announcement being made, or together as a group you are working on something and it can't be done anywhere else. What the outcome of what happens in that is going to come from that group at that time, or that an announcement is going to come out at that time, and you're the first to hear it if you're on that virtual event. So something about exclusivity associated with the event, right? And the second thing is not offering a recording as an option, which I think has a place at times. I think the majority of times, I do think it's cordial to offer a recording. But if you're not offering a recording and the content is good enough, you might want to try to be there.
Man,
Jenny, I love that.
I
And
would
if
love to
you,
do that. I would get pitchforks and people coming to kill me.
I know, but like, man, Adrian, I've skipped a couple because I was like, I'll just catch the recording.
I know.
You know, I mean, I try, but I did want to say, if you haven't heard of Rude Janssen, Janssen, he is a person who has dedicated his life to building great events. And so I shared the template that his team developed here on how to create these types of events. And especially if you have volunteers who are brand ambassadors who may or may not do this in their daily life, sometimes there's a skills gap between what they want to do and what they can do. And by stepping in as a community manager and teaching them those skills, you're supporting them in your mission of getting those high quality events out there, but you're also helping them gain skills, which is an intrinsic motivator. So it's another reason someone might want to be in your brand ambassador program.
And Amanda, can I ask you a question? Because you had also said that you tend to want to watch the replay on something if you're just if you don't have time or something. But how often do you go back and watch the replay? I'm just curious.
Oh, that is such a good question. I would say like 33% of the time.
Most people don't.
That was my.
I don't think most people don't.
But they still want the option. But I agree with
you. I mean, it's just like needing a subscription digest for a community platform. Nobody reads it, but everybody wants it. They want to check that box and be like, yeah, I got to unsubscribe from that email. Perfect.
I do want to share a link to a platform that I thought was really helpful called Sessionize that I thought was really handy. And what was good for that, when I was doing early on when we did vanilla conversations, what was great is people could submit their talks, and then I was able to create a community within the company, so to speak, that would go and vote on the topics. And so I got immediate feedback on what people wanted to hear as well. So that's another way that you could probably curate it, as well as letting the community tell you what are the talks they actually want to hear. And kind of letting democracy decide who or what gets spoken about.
I love that, Adrian. Thanks for sharing that. I'd never heard of that tool before. It is a pet peeve of mine when content is being created for events without asking your community.
So I can tell you that Sessionize is the reason that I was able to pull off vanilla conversations in 6 weeks at the start of COVID. If it hadn't been for Sessionize, it would have never happened. It handled everything, and if you don't charge for your event, I believe it's still free.
Yeah.
So you can manage everything from the call to speakers to the voting to the scheduling. It's a fantastic platform.
That's amazing. I would say, and not to be like just dropping mural templates all the time, but there's a thing called Lean Coffee, which does something similar, and we have a template for it because our community asked for it. And so one of the things that we did was we have a templates ideas area, and people can ask us for templates. And then this one got enough votes and we built it. It is one of our most popularly used templates since it went live. And so I love it because you can do it asynchronously. You can gather people to give you these ideas, and you can vote on those topics and creations. And then as you discuss them, you can basically capture notes and move them through the process. You don't have to use a tool like this for Lean Coffee. You can just follow the Lean Coffee principles. But it is so nice to be able to come to an agendaless meeting, answer people's questions, and just move forward.
Mural has the coolest templates. I love this.
Yay! I love Mural.
If we weren't dropping templates, Amanda wouldn't be here. Like, that's just I feel like she has like a Rolodex of templates for like everything. It's
You
like,
have to, I always tell everyone that as a community manager and a community professional, my job is as a spider librarian. I sit in my little middle of my web. I know my web really, really well. And if somebody gets into my web and like the little thing goes off and I'm like, oh, that person is interested in this thing, I know exactly where to find it because I'm a librarian.
Spider librarian. I love
Spider
it.
librarian.
I
That's me.
love
Oh
that.
my gosh. Amanda, if you ever create a group of community professionals, it should be called the Spider Librarians.
The spider librarians. And everybody
Yeah,
else would be like, I really don't like spiders.
I know we're getting closer to the end of time, so I don't know what Kat and Tirza have up for us next, but I'd be curious if everyone, all our attendees, can drop maybe one big takeaway so far that you all have gotten out of this hour.
Mm-hmm.
Spider librarians, gonna get on TikTok.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is, just one takeaway, something of value you got from our talk today. Awesome. Anna, thank you. And thank you for your questions as well.
Vision. So we've got vision setting for community migrations. Any changes community need to check back with your members. There are, it looks like, 3 outstanding questions in the chat.
We can take them to Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I can post them on Twitter. I'll follow up with the people that posted them and I guess ask if that's okay. Adrian,
I was just saying it's hard to see what the questions are, but if they're rapid fire, maybe we can answer them quickly.
You want to rapid fire them?
Sure.
In a minute.
Okay, rapid fire.
I'm like, I've got to call exactly when we stop somehow.
All right. Does what are they talking about apply to deciding whether to start with location-based or domain-based user groups?
This is about talking to your members. Absolutely. Absolutely. Start where people are at. Make it matter.
What's the best way to recruit more brand ambassadors to community without sacrificing quality?
Don't sacrifice quality.
Don't sacrifice quality.
Be
the spider librarian and cultivate those relationships.
The quick answer to is building a community commitment curve and seeing those people come through, and then you'll be able to identify them faster as well.
Awesome. And then lastly, how can you help? This is a longer question. I don't know if I need. I'll just say, how can you help other internal teams feel comfortable opening themselves up for this kind of feedback from the community? The feedback would be internal members are hesitant to openly asking questions for feedback as it opens the door for criticism. People may think they have the best answers already.
So you're telling me they don't want to hear criticism because they'd rather someone go on Reddit or somewhere else and yell about how bad the company is because their ego is.
The fast answer to this is model the behavior that you want to see. And so if you want to show openness and honesty and feedback, you demonstrate it. That is why you'll see me in our community posting my templates, even though it looks like a 3-year-old drew them. And that is because I am modeling the behavior that I want our internal teams to take. And over time, that turns into something beautiful.
And my point is, I love that point. I guess the other thing is like the conversations are going to happen anyways, so you might as well have it on your domain. And
yeah,
you could point out, hey, there are other places this is happening. We don't even have the ability to engage in it.
Yes, and you got to do both.
Both, absolutely. See, we did it. I love rapid fire.
Adrian and Amanda are much better at rapid fire than I am. But y'all, that was great. That was on par. Nice job.
So we got all the questions done. We've got key takeaways in the chat. The DC CMX Connect chapter has another event in April that we're super excited about putting together and confirming the panel. So the link is there to RSVP and follow the event for the new panelists. But thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. Thank you to Adrian, Amanda, and Jenny. This was so delightful and so fantastic. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. And I hope that all of the attendees really had as many takeaways as I did. So yeah, thanks. Anything else before we wrap up? Anyone? Anything else to add?
I'm always happy to talk. I'm on Twitter. You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Jenny and Adrian, I know you probably would say the same thing.
Yeah, you
so.
can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter,
On all the things.
all the
Just
things.
don't
Find
look
us.
for me on TikTok. You won't find me. I'm
You might
hidden.
find me under my community account on TikTok because I have a YouTube account, so now I have a TikTok account.
We got to talk about YouTube videos one day, but that'll be another time.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
My
everyone.
cat and tears on.
See you.
See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you all. All right. Take care.